There is a truth we are not taught early enough. Not every bond that feels warm is safe, and not every friend is meant to walk the full path with you. Friendship, at first glance, appears as a sanctuary, a space of laughter, of loyalty, of shared dreams. But beneath its surface often lies a subtle entrapment, an unspoken demand to remain who you were when the friendship was born. You see, the real danger of friendship is not betrayal. The real danger is stagnation disguised as connection. We rarely realize it in the beginning, but many of the friendships we form are not born from wholeness, they are born from wounds, from loneliness, from abandonment, from rejection, from the ache of not being seen in childhood. And so, we find people who carry a similar pain, and without words we bond. It feels like comfort, like home, but it is not always healing, it is often a silent pact. I will not touch your wound if you do not touch mine. This is why certain friendships feel deeply safe but strangely stagnant. There is a mutual understanding to stay the same, to not go too deep, to not evolve beyond the emotional framework where the friendship began. You meet each other in pain, and the pain becomes the glue. You laugh together, cry together, maybe even share your darkest stories, but there is often an invisible line neither of you is allowed to cross. Because real healing, the kind that transforms the psyche, would mean disrupting the dynamic. And in many cases, that dynamic is the very thing holding the friendship in place. It becomes tricky. One friend starts to change, maybe they begin therapy, or set boundaries, or discover new truths about themselves. Suddenly, the dynamic shifts, the comfort zone breaks, the other friend, still clinging to the old identity, feels threatened. And so, without even knowing why, they begin to sabotage. They might withdraw. Or they might criticize. Or they might pull you back into the old roles, the old stories where you were the victim, the caretaker, the dependent one, because your growth highlights their refusal to grow. Your healing disturbs the pact, and so the friendship, once a sanctuary, now becomes a shield. It protects the wound, but it also protects the illusion that we can remain unchanged and still feel fulfilled, the illusion that we can have deep connection without deep transformation. But wounds do not disappear when we protect them, they calcify. They become part of our identity, and friendships that revolve around this protection begin to suffocate the soul. They demand that you stay hurt, stay agreeable, stay small, all under the guise of loyalty. The deepest betrayal, then, is not walking away from such a friend. The deepest betrayal is walking away from yourself to stay connected to a version of you that no longer exists. Some friends are not meant to walk with you into your healing. Their role was to accompany you in your wounding, and that, too, was sacred. But you must learn to recognize when the role is complete. Staying too long in that old container begins to rot the bond from the inside. What once was love turns into resentment. What once was safety becomes stagnation. True love allows transformation. Real friendship does not chain you to your pain, it dares you to face it, to rise beyond it, and to become someone entirely new. But not everyone will walk with you through that fire, and that's okay. Not all friendships are meant to last forever. Some are bridges, some are mirrors, some are teachers in disguise. The key is knowing when to bless them, release them, and continue your path, no longer hiding your wound, but honoring the power that came from healing it. There is a quiet fear that lives beneath many of our friendships, the fear of outgrowing those we love. It begins as a subtle discomfort. You start thinking differently, your priorities shift. The things that once felt important to both of you no longer hold the same weight. You begin to seek depth, meaning, solitude, purpose, and yet, you find yourself hesitating to fully step into that new space. Not because you don't want it, but because you're afraid of what it might cost you. You begin to wonder, if I change too much, will they still love me? Will they still understand me? Will I still belong? These questions grow louder with every step toward growth. And so, instead of embracing your becoming, you shrink. You downplay your insights. You silence your new voice. You dim your light not because it's wrong, but because you fear it will blind those who have not yet opened their eyes. This is how friendship becomes a leash. It doesn't always happen with cruelty or malice. Sometimes, It's the people closest to you who keep you tethered not because they want to hurt you, but because your evolution threatens their comfort. When you rise, it exposes the parts of themselves they have neglected. When you change, it breaks the unspoken rule that we must stay the same to stay close, and many are not willing to face what your growth reflects in them. So they resist not openly, but passively, a sarcastic remark, a dismissive laugh, a sudden distance, a lingering silence, and you feel it in your bones. You're not allowed to become more than who you were when they loved you most. The most tragic part is that, in trying to preserve the friendship, you begin to betray yourself. You remain in places that no longer nourish your spirit. You engage in conversations that feel shallow. You participate in rituals of connection that no longer feel true. And each time you do, a small part of you whispers, "This isn't who you are anymore." But guilt is a powerful force. You remember the shared history. The laughter, the nights you cried together, the loyalty, the years, it all feels too sacred to leave behind, and so you try to carry them with you, even when they refuse to move. You try to make space for your new self while protecting their old comfort. But you can't serve two truths, and eventually something breaks. You either abandon your path or you risk the friendship. This is the painful edge of transformation, realizing that not everyone can come with you. That growth is not just an internal process, but a relational one. It changes your connections. It disrupts familiar dynamics, and sometimes it requires letting go. But what if the real loyalty is not to others, but to your becoming? What if your duty is not to the past, but to the future version of you that is waiting, yearning to be lived? What if you are not betraying anyone by changing, you are simply honoring a truth too large to ignore? Letting go does not mean forgetting. It does not mean closing the heart. It means recognizing that love does not always equal alignment, that sometimes the kindest thing you can do for both of you is to set the leash down and walk forward free. Because you were not born to stay where it's safe. You were born to become, and no friendship, no matter how familiar, is worth the cost of your soul's unfolding. There is a silence in friendship that no one wants to speak of, the silence of envy. It is not loud, it does not declare itself, it does not storm in with confrontation or rage. Instead, it slips in quietly, wearing a smile, a congratulatory hug, a kind word edged with subtle bitterness. It shows up as a delayed reply, a strange distance, a change in tone that you can feel but not name. We are taught to expect envy from strangers, from critics, from those who oppose us. But we are not prepared to see it in the eyes of those who once celebrated our smallest victories. It is jarring to feel something shift when your life starts to align, to watch the people who once uplifted you grow quiet as you begin to rise. You tell yourself you're imagining things, that you're being paranoid. You make excuses for them, they're just busy. Maybe I said something wrong, but deep down you know, something is off. Envy does not always hate you. Sometimes it loves you, but it resents what your life reflects. Your courage, your growth, your joy, these things begin to mirror back to them their own stagnation, their own unlived potential, the places within themselves they've abandoned. And instead of facing that pain, it is easier to turn it outward. They may not even know they're doing it. Envy is rarely conscious. It hides in the subconscious, disguised as sarcasm, concern, disinterest. The most dangerous envy is not aggressive, it's passive. It undermines slowly. It comes as backhanded compliments. You've changed, I just hope it's not going to your head. Or I miss the old you. It comes through subtle guilt. Don't forget who was there for you before all of this. And you begin to feel a strange pressure not to fail, but to not succeed too much. Not to become arrogant, not to outgrow, not to leave anyone behind. You find yourself shrinking, dimming your light, softening your wins. You don't mention the new opportunities. You don't share the excitement. You begin to edit yourself not because you're being asked to, but because you can feel that your full self is no longer fully welcomed, and that is how envy traps you. Not by confrontation, but by subtle erosion. By teaching you that being your fullest, brightest self might cost you love. But love that punishes you for expanding is not love. It is control disguised as loyalty. You must understand that your rising will always disturb those who have refused to climb. Your healing will always agitate those who have chosen to remain wounded. Your light will always expose those who are still hiding in the dark, and that is not your fault. It is not your duty to remain small, so others can feel safe. It is not your role to hold back so others do not feel left behind. True friends do not measure your light against their shadows. They celebrate without comparison. They see your becoming as a mirror of their own potential, not as a threat. So when you feel the weight of unspoken envy wrapped in the warmth of old friendship, do not ignore it, do not lash out, but do not deny it either. Recognize it for what it is, the shadow that emerges when light enters the room. And remember, it is not your job to pull others out of their shadows. It is only your job to keep walking in your truth. If they are meant to walk with you, they will choose their light. If not, let them go. Let them remain behind with grace, for nothing is more tragic than betraying your soul to remain digestible to those who have not yet met their own. Most friendships are born in the realm of illusion. We meet someone, and almost immediately we begin to imagine. We imagine who they are. We imagine who we are in their presence. We imagine what the bond means, what it could become, what role they might play in the landscape of our lives. In this imagining, we create a container, a story, and both people begin performing their roles within it. This is not done with malice. It's simply how the unconscious works. We attach, we idealize, we project. You don't see the friend not truly. You see the part of yourself you've cast onto them. You see the unmet needs they seem to answer, the comfort they bring, the stability, the familiarity, the sense of being seen even if only partially. The friendship becomes a mutual agreement to maintain that illusion. I'll be who you need me to be, and you'll do the same for me. For a while, this works. It feels safe. It feels nourishing. But as with all illusions, time exposes what lies beneath. Eventually, life introduces chaos. One of you begins to change. Something shifts, a loss, a breakthrough, a revelation, a silent inner evolution. The parts that were once hidden begin to surface. The friend is no longer satisfied with their role. Or perhaps you are no longer satisfied with yours. You say something different. You show up differently. The image begins to crack. This is when the real test of friendship arrives. When illusion begins to die, can the bond survive the truth? True friendship does not begin in comfort. It begins in confrontation, not the confrontation of conflict, but the confrontation with reality. When the masks fall, when the idealizations dissolve, when the subtle disappointments are no longer ignored. It begins when both people are finally seen not for who they pretended to be, but for who they truly are, flawed, changing, contradictory, wounded, sacred. This death of illusion is often painful. It may feel like a loss. The lightness that once defined the relationship may fade. There may be silence, distance, confusion, but in that space a choice arises. Do we let the truth deepen us, or do we retreat into the safety of the past? Most friendships end here because facing the truth requires work. It requires maturity. It requires both people to let go of their need to control the narrative. It asks for vulnerability without performance, love without idealization, and presence without demand. If you are willing to meet there, and so the bond dissolves, and you grieve not only the friend, but the version of yourself that existed in that friendship. But if both souls are truly willing to walk through the death of illusion, something extraordinary happens. A deeper bond is born, one not based on roles or wounds or fantasies, but on essence, on seeing, on mutual becoming. It is quieter than the first kind of friendship, less performative, more raw, but infinitely more sacred. This kind of friendship has no need to cling. It does not demand constant reassurance. It is not threatened by silence or solitude. It lives in trust, not dependency, in witnessing, not rescuing, in evolution, not sameness. You don't need to be the same person you were when the bond began, and neither do they. The friendship itself becomes a living thing, fluid, breathing, growing, capable of holding change without collapsing under it. So if you feel a friendship unraveling, ask yourself, is the illusion dying, Or is the truth finally being born? Not every friendship will survive the shedding of the false. But the ones that do will never ask you to dim your light, to silence your soul, or to pretend to be anything less than your full, evolving self. That and only that is friendship. Everything else is arrangement, performance, or memory. Let the illusion die, and see who is still standing beside you in the light.